Hi, good morning. I am joining today to talk about title, and I am requesting my title rep, Mark Stipkovich. So give me just a moment while I invite. And hopefully Mark will jump on in just a moment. Hey there. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm so glad you could join me here.
Of course. I'm,
Um,
I'm jealous of your perfect lighting over there.
Oh yeah, I got the lighting and I got the filter on. Sorry guys.
You
I
got
love the
skills. You got
filters.
skills over there. I feel inadequate.
Yeah, I don't look this great in real life, but hey man, if you can use filters, why not? um, we'll just get right into it. Mark's my go-to title rep. He's our in-house title rep for my office, KW Encino-Sherman Oaks. Can you tell us how long you've been doing title for, and yeah, just how'd you get started in that?
Sure. Actually, randomly, my grandfather owned a chain of escrow companies back in the day, and then when my mom moved up to Los Angeles, she got into title in 1983. I still actually work with her. My dad worked in title and escrow, and growing up, I told my parents that they had the worst job in the world, and then I actually got into the work world and realized that's actually a pretty good gig, and I'd probably be pretty good at it. So I started in 2002. So March of this year will be my 20th year
Amazing.
in the title insurance industry. Yeah.
Very cool. So family business got you in and you're still here.
I actually interviewed with my mom's boss without her knowing.
How funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Tell us, what is a title rep like yourself? What do they do?
We wear a lot of hats. A lot of people don't quite understand, title insurance. At the end of the day, it's a fraud prevention product to make sure buyers and sellers are protected, agents, lenders, everybody, right? Fraud prevention. At the end of the day, that's our product. Me personally, I'm working with agents such as yourself, escrow, lender, commercial brokers, investors, flippers, you name it. I work with anybody because every single transaction.
Oh, we lost your sound. There we go.
Ring a lot. My phone's going to ring a
Okay.
lot during this, so my phone rings a lot through the course of the day. I get a lot of text messages, a lot of emails, but at the end of the day, I work with anybody that is doing a transaction, right? Because whether it's a refinance or a sale, or you're looking to build or subdivide, you're going to need you're going to need a title insurance. You're going to need a title insurance rep. So I wear a lot of hats. New agents, I help them build their business. I do a lot of business development. That's how I earn their trust. But at the end of the day, the product that we're selling is title insurance, and every single transaction, if you want to protect yourself, is going to need title insurance. You still got me?
Perfect. Sorry, I kind of went, yeah, I disappeared for a second. But yeah, that's a great explanation, or thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who's joining. I see that we have a lot of people on here. So hello to everybody who's joining our live right now. Um,
I
can
see.
you tell
I
us,
see Jeff Geist.
right, lots of people here. Can you tell us what is the definition of title insurance? What does it do for buyers and sellers? You said it was a fraud prevention product, but maybe you can go into more detail.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a definition because there's so much stuff there. But at the end of the day, the product is, if we're keeping it as simple as can be, fraud prevention, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, a seller, when they sell the property, it's their obligation to deliver clear title to the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And what is clear title? Well, it doesn't have any loans against them. All their loans are paid off. Maybe they haven't paid their property tax. Their property tax have to be paid off. Maybe they have federal or state tax liens. Maybe they have child support liens. Anything that's against the property or them personally is going to be underwritten to make sure that that property is clear going to the buyer and that the lender feels secure and safe, that there is no other liens or obligations going with the property, right? And so those are the financial aspects of it. But also, when you transfer property, it could have easements, it could have covenants, it could have restrictions, it could have encroachments, it could have all these little things that will pop up over the course of a transaction. And some of those actually get transferred over to the new buyer, right? easements, oil, mineral rights, gas rights, certain things like that. The buyer takes ownership of those when they take ownership of the property. And then some of them are wiped away.
To interrupt really quick, for those who don't know, an easement would be like maybe the power company has to go across your property to get to the power lines, and an easement gives them that access. Well, you want to know about that if you're buying the property, that every so often the power company is going to walk across your yard to get to the line, right? Stuff like that.
Exactly. And a lot of times buyers these days are like, well, I don't want that on my property. I want that removed. Well, it can't be removed. It's a recorded item that was documented by the courts, recorded by all parties involved in order to have that access. And the only way to get rid of it would be to take it to court or do certain, or get an agreement between parties to remove it.
Right, which would probably be really hard if it's something to do with the city, right?
It costs money and it takes time.
Yeah. So for issues that come up that regard the buyer and the seller, like say the seller of the property has a child support lien or a mechanic's lien. By the way, guys, the mechanic's lien is if the seller had maybe some work done on the property. Maybe they got a new roof, but they didn't pay the roofer. The roofer can put a lien on the house, you know, so they can get paid. So maybe some liens come up or a lawsuit comes up. How does that get taken care of in the transaction? Usually, does the seller pay for that? The buyer pay for that? What happens?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say 90% of my deals flow right through, no issues, no phone call. 10% of my deals have issues, right? And that's where I spend most of my time, is trying to clear those issues. In that case, whether it's a child support lien, a lot of times you'll actually see when buyers and sellers fill out statements of information that kind of verifies who they are. Lots of common names. Liens and judgments might pop up, and it may or may not even be theirs, right? Mm-hmm. So we have them fill out a statement of information that says who they are, social security number, all that kind of stuff. We verify who they are. So a lot of those items could just fall right off the prelim based on that. But let's say these liens and judgments are theirs. Well, they have to be paid and or satisfied. That's the only way to clear it, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody has a child support lien, that doesn't mean that they are not paying, right? It just means they have to show that they're current. Mm-hmm. Right, and if they are not paying, well, they might have to come up with a sum of money to pay that off in order to sell, right? And those would typically come out of the net proceeds. You know, I see some really ugly prelims out there. Prelim is our intent to insure, and lots of tax liens and judgments and all this kind of stuff. And as long as there's enough equity in the property to pay those off, everything can go very smooth.
Very cool. That's good information. Now, who pays for the actual title insurance during a deal? Like in our area, what's common? Does the buyer pay for the title insurance? Does the seller pay?
So it is the seller's obligation to pay for the buyer's title policy, right? So the seller will have the larger portion of the title fee. If the buyer is paying all cash, the buyer does not even have a title fee, right? So the seller would be the only one paying the fee in that particular situation. You know, 80, 90% of deals have a lender, right? Mm-hmm. So the seller would pay the large portion of the title fee to clear it to the buyer, and then the buyer would pay their lender's title fee, right? Which would be a smaller amount. Typically, I would say maybe a third of the cost, but the lender is going to require a title insurance policy. I'm sorry, my dog's making noise in the background. It's kind of funny.
All good.
Working from home, COVID. But the buyer would have to get a loan policy to protect the lender.
Okay, and then what's like an average cost? Could you give us a, like, say we're selling $1 million house. How much is the seller going to pay for title?
Yeah, on average, I don't have the rate book in front of me, and there's no real formula to figure that out on your own. We just have a rate chart that's filed with the state. All title companies do, and all title insurance companies' fees are really within hundreds of dollars a year. They're all very competitive. So it's hard to find a discount out there, but I would say $1 million seller fee, typically probably be around $3,400, and it's a one-time fee at time of closing, right? So you don't continue to pay this; you pay it one time. You're insured that the property, when you're getting it, is free and clear of all judgments. We'll get into probably some situations why that's a good thing in a second. And then the buyer, let's just say hypothetically, they put 20% down. They would be buying a loan policy based on $800,000. So not $1 million, $800,000. Mm-hmm. And that fee might be in the neighborhood of $1,600 is my guess off the top of my head. And it would go up or down depending on the price point. That's how it's priced.
Wonderful. Thank you. What was the thing that you said you were going to go into? just now.
So what protection, right? Most people believe that title insurance is just a fee that they pay and that, you know, we just rake in all this money because there's never any claims. I've had many situations with many claims. One this year in particular where the seller was frauding the identity of somebody who owned a property in another country. It was an absentee owned property. So he frauded the identity of a person in another country, sold the property to somebody, one of my clients who purchased the property, and turns out that a week later the seller's like, hey, why are you showing up on my property, blah blah blah.
Oh my goodness.
It's completely fraudulent identity. $1.6 million gone. This guy took it and ran, right? And so obviously that's a stressful situation, right? It could be your entire life savings going down the tubes. Because they have title insurance. They eventually will get reimbursed. That might take 3 to 6 months in order to go through the process for them to do their investigation to make sure they're not frauding them, right? Fraud on all sides. But they'll eventually be made whole because they have title insurance. And that's an extreme case, but that's what really makes our real estate market function.
Yeah, I like that. And I'd like to share one quick story too. This one's not as crazy as that one, but it's still awful for the people involved. I have clients that I worked with last year, and in the course of this year, they actually bought some land on eBay, oddly enough. And they didn't consult me. They didn't consult any real estate professional, unfortunately, about the purchase of this land. They saw land listings on eBay, called the owner, bought it, didn't involve an escrow company, didn't involve a real estate agent, didn't involve a title company, and found out a few months later that they inherited that previous owner's back taxes. So now they owe the property taxes of the previous owner on this land that they acquired. Luckily, it's not too expensive, but it is this burden that they've now had to take on. And had they had a title insurance in place, or escrow or a great agent, they would have known that this needed to be, you needed to have this before, making a real estate transfer. You want to make sure your title is clear before you're taking it on as a buyer, unless maybe you're an investor, right? A lot of investors may, if a lien comes up, they may end up paying it if they're buying the house, at a discount, and they don't mind paying that extra fee, whatever it is, because they're buying this property at such a low cost. So just a quick example for people. Mark, what would you say people should look for when selecting a title company? I know usually in our field for sellers, you usually, as a seller, you usually just go with the title company that the agent you're working with is used to working with. So if you work with me, you're probably going to work with Mark from Lawyers Title. But what should people know about, their title companies?
That's typically industry standard, right? Sellers, buyers, they don't have relationships with title companies. Agents do, right? The reality is majority of the time, if a title insurance company is going to insure, a buyer is going to be protected. There is a financial security aspect to going with a larger title company, right? One of the top 5 or 6 out there. A lot of smaller title companies that might be regional, they're 1 or 2 bad deals from kind of going out of business. But even those smaller title companies are underwritten by one of our companies, right? I work for Lawyers Title. We're owned by F&F, Fidelity National Financial. It's a Fortune 200 company, billion-dollar firm, right? So a lot of financial stability there in order to pay claims, right? We're not going to go out of business if stuff goes wrong. But at the end of the day, sellers get to choose typically who they're going to use, and buyers are almost forced to use it. Now, when you're dealing with commercial, when you're dealing with builders, subdivision, a lot larger transactions, those guys get pretty particular because they're going to be stuck with the title company for years on end, and they'll fight for a guy like me to have in their corner because they're going to have to call me on the weekly for the next 2-3 years in order to get what they need approved and built. Big financial money always flows through title. I funded a $20-30 million deal last week, and those people won't even send their money to escrow. They'll go straight to the title company. They're going to want a large title company to ensure that transaction, because obviously that's a lot of money. So financial stability is kind of a big thing. But at the end of the day, it's a product like everything else. You sell a product, I sell a product, and it's about the people that you're working with. Can you trust them? Are they responsible? You know, if one of your clients has a problem, what's going to happen? I'm going to get on the phone. I'm going to talk with them. You know, I'm not going to charge them anything, just being helpful, right, to put people in the right direction, you know, I think is the biggest thing.
Absolutely. And I can testify for Mark. He's wonderful. Anytime I have a question or send an email, he's on top of it and answers right away. So I really appreciate you and Serena. Anything else we should know about title? Any other stories you want to share before we?
I mean, if anybody has any questions, I don't know how this thing works. You might want to fire off some questions, but I would say another situation, I kind of brought up one of the most extreme situations, but another situation was about 10, 15 years back. A celebrity purchased a home strictly to build a pool, right? Must be nice, right? You build a property, you buy a property to build an Olympic-sized pool. And turns out when they went to go dig, you know, boom, they hit just a massive pipe, right? And this pipe was not registered. It was not, the maps were not drawn. It was from way prior to 1930. It wasn't in use, but the cost to move or build to move something this large was just not going to happen, right? And so the seller in this particular case, you know, opened up a claim with the title insurance company. It was ours at the time, and basically said, hey, I bought this property with this particular use. This wasn't showing, you know, I would like to file a claim, right? And essentially we just bought the property back from her, right?
Wow.
Because we were on the line. We didn't show this item, right? She didn't want the property anymore. And
Right.
because she had insurance on it, we took the property back. So that's another smaller case of a large money transaction, but there's lots of them out there. I would say 1 or 2 times a year, I get somebody calling me up randomly on the phone and be like, hey, my friend wants to sell to this person or this person. We don't want to do title and we don't want to do escrow. We want to save our $5,000, right? At the end of the day, that's probably what it would cost depending on the transaction. And, you know, what are the problems? And I always advise against it. I said, look, because as you mentioned, right, they took on back property taxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a person right now could not have any liens, not have any debts, right? And then we do a transaction. I transfer it over to my buddy and he gives me money and we just quit claim deed it over. Well, that's an uninsured transaction, right? So 5 years down the line, my friend goes to sell the property, refinance or something like that. And they're going to need information from me. Why? Because I'm still on the chain of title. There was no break. There was no insurance. So now they underwrite me, and maybe I got in a bad accident, right? And I have medical liens and judgments against me and certain things like that. All of these are going to attach to that property.
Wow.
Because there was no title insurance. There was no break in title. So the entire history in the chain of title, unless there's an actual insurance policy there, is at risk, right? So I've even had transactions where somebody's selling a $2,500 piece of land, right? And the title and escrow is like $2,000, right? It's all like the title and escrow fees are as much as the property's worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when you might want to make a business decision about it. But if you want to protect yourself, you're always going to want to have it and need it. And it's you know, it's in our contract that it's required. But if you think about doing off-market transactions, just be careful. Or at least call me on the phone and get my advice.
Right? How can people reach you best?
I don't deal too much with the general public, right?
Mm-hmm.
Typically, you'll go through your agent. But ever since COVID hit, I've been a lot more active with clients referring me to their clients because they need to put a property in a trust, take it out of a trust, quit claim a deed over, record a property with the documents. But I'm available online. My website is titledude.com. Pretty easy to remember. So titledude.com. My contact information is there, my cell phone, my email address. You'll see my mom's information is there as well. And so we're always available. I had a guy call me last week who's asking me a whole bunch of questions. And he's like, well, what do I pay you for this? I'm like, nothing. You know, it's free. You know, I get paid on transactions, right? Just like you guys. So we're always there to help. And I've been doing a lot of it during COVID.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you. I don't have any further questions, and it doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and end this. But before we go, just stay on really quick and smile. I'm going to try and take a screenshot of us for our cover. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Take care, Mark. Have a good day.
Thanks, Lauren. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.